we can get started. So, just as you guys know, this call is being recorded. Those of you who are joining very for the very first time, I like to kind of say that we generally have this kind of call every month, wherein we discuss about the new stuff that we kind of have recently launched, and then we also talk about some of the new stuff that are kind of in the coming out in the near future. And of course, if you guys have any questions, I mean, you can also kind of jump in and kind of send us a message in the chat, right? So I do have my colleague, and yeah, you can also unmute yourself and ask any questions, right? So this is more like a quick recap of what has happened in Xenett in last few weeks, and we generally have this call every. I mean, we do send out the weekly emails to our customers and then kind of tell them, hey, this is all kind of new stuff and things like that. But we kind of figured that it would be a good idea to have a call like this on a monthly basis. So that's why we are here today. All right, so now I'm gonna share my screen and then I'm gonna walk you through some of the things that we just launched. Just let me just share my screen. All right, Manish, can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, Hardik.
Okay, perfect, awesome. All right, so we'll get started with the Xenett Go first. That is our browser extension. So I'm not sure if like many of you have already been started playing around with it. So those of you who are not kind of very much kind of aware about this browser extension, so we have launched this browser extension, which is actually available on this link, Xenett go.xenett.com. It's a browser extension that allows Xenett to work inside your QuickBooks file, right? So right now I'm getting into this QuickBooks client, and then you can see this menu on the top, and like whenever you click on any of the menu, it is actually going to load the Xenett module right here. So as you can see that you don't really need to kind of go to Xenett, like you don't have to remember to go to Xenett and then go to that particular client. Just like you are navigating to your QuickBooks file for any of your routine work, you can actually access Xenett module just like any other modules of Xenett, right? So the whole thing is that the navigation is very much seamless, right? That's gonna save you a lot of time and it's gonna come very, very handy, right? So that was one of the things that we actually rolled out in last, I mean, before 3 or 4 weeks. So those of you who have not installed it yet, it's highly recommended that you guys use it because that's how people have found it kind of quite efficient to work with Xanet, right? So that's number one, that update that I wanted to give. Second update was that, and let's like there is nothing to show as such, but we actually did a lot of improvements with the zero. So those of you who are actually zero users, so we actually so transactions edit wasn't available for zero client. It was only available for QuickBooks client. So now for Zero client, you guys can also edit the transactions in Xenett and the changes will also be synced back to your Zero file. Along with the transactions edit, you guys can also now use client portal. So those of you who use client portal for QuickBooks clients will now be also be able to use client portal for Zero client, right? So like your most common routine questions like uncategorized transactions or asking for some documents, right? Those for those questions you can use client portal, right? So that's also kind of feature available. A lot of you also requested that the sorting order for to do, I mean the closing to do, right? So previously, when you add any task here in your close mode, you were not able to sort it. But that is something we also made it available. So if you just kind of put the task here and there, you'll be able to set the order for closing to do as well. Okay, so that's another feature that we have added. We also made some changes with the close mode. So those of you who are actually using it, this GL reconciliation, we used to have three different columns for that. Like there used to be a column for GL balance, and then the reconcile balance, and then the difference amount, right? So many of you like were not literally adding the GL accounts here, and in that case those columns would still show up, and it was actually occupying a lot of space, excuse me. So now what we did was we kind of uncluttered a lot of these things into close mode. So now as you can see, I mean, there's a small panel, I mean, I would say for GL account. So that indicates the GL balance. And then with that, you can also put the reconcile balance as well. Like you can say, let's say reconcile balance is 36, and you can attach your working files here. So this feature was already there. It's not a new thing, but we just change the outlook here. So instead of like, we just remove the columns and introduce this small panel. So now kind of things look little clean. Okay. So and then there used to be separate counts here for the task and then for the reconciliation, right? So we also ended up merging it. So now, I mean, you as a whole, you know that, hey, you still got 28 tasks to be done and four are done. 20, like the reviewers has still kind of to take care three of them, right? So that way you kind of know what is happening in your close. So we, I mean, this was there again. We just ended up merging the counts. So for closing to dos and reconciliation into one. Okay. So that is another change that we did. All right. Create review points. So previously, like if you were into cleanup mode, and if we had to add a review point here, you needed to go to come here and then set some parameters and click on save this search. So a lot of people were not really sure that this is how it should be done. So what we did instead, we just kind of added this point like review point. So that way at least they know, I mean, it's a easy way to kind of find it from there. So we just added this button here. Okay. So that's another thing that we had done. And now, yeah, on client portal side, we made some changes. So what we did was when you go to client portal, general setting. Okay. So this is where as an accountant user, you can decide which columns you want to show it to your client user, right? So let me also pull up what your client sees. Okay. So this is your client view. By default, we were showing all the columns here, right? But then with this feature, you can now decide if you wanted to enable or disable any of the columns. So that's one feature that we have added. Another feature that we have added is that even with this accounts or names or product, if you want to like only show certain list like certain values, you can also do that. So like whichever ones that you want to hide or yeah exclude, just select them. So those particular values will not show up. So if I have to explain you the same with the example, let's say when you are like, let's say like there's an account drop down, right? And then you want your client to pick an account, like let's say as a client, I see all the accounts here, right? Not necessarily all the accounts are relevant as a client user, right? So as an accountant user, you can now restrict those accounts to only show certain specific accounts. So for example, you don't want to show accounts like depreciation here, right? Because I mean, you're not gonna select it those kind of accounts here, right? So rather than confusing your client, what you can do is that give them only those options from which you want your client to select. So that way you can actually restrict the drop down values for your client users. Okay, I just want to see if there is any chat, any questions in between. So I'm just kind of quickly looking at the chat. Okay, all right. I think we're good with that. Guys, feel free to leave your questions in the chat, or I mean, feel free to interrupt me by unmuting yourself also. Okay. So that's another feature that we did. All right. Okay. So this is also a feature that we um, give an option. So what this means is that ask to accountant. So let me show you. This is what my client sees. Okay. Now, as a client user, you cannot ask questions to accountant because we have given this option where it's not enabled. If you want to have a both the way communication, like if you also want your client to send you questions, you can enable it. So it says ask to accountant. When you do that, like let's say if you enable it, your client user will also be able to ask, like send you the questions also from their end, right? So now I just refreshed it. uh, Let me just make sure. Not sure why it's not showing up, but anyways, so what's going to happen is that as a client user, they will also be able to see an option where they can submit or ask questions to accountant also, right? So that's another settings that we have enabled it. Okay, so that's that. We made some changes also in the cleanup mode, where let me just show you. So what's going to happen is that when you are going through any of these review points, and if you let's say you are into entries posted to parent account, for example, and you are here looking at this. Now when you click on those vendor name or GL account, it will immediately pull up the ledger, right? So let me give you next like a situation. So right now I'm looking at lost transactions, putting like it's recorded to legal and professional services, but then I wanted to find out if at all there are any transactions for loss, I mean, recorded in the past. I don't need to go anywhere. I'm just gonna simply click on it. It's gonna show me all the transactions for that vendor. I can quickly see where it was posted, and then I can kind of quickly reclassify it. So it's basically kind of more like a we linked. I mean, introduce a link, and you can easily pull up the ledger. So that's another thing that we basically did it here. Okay, so that's that. Now we also introduced notifications. That was one of the most requested feature by our customers. So what's going to happen is that when you click on these three dots and click on my account, you can see notification preferences here, right? So these are the new categories that we have introduced. So you can now receive an email notifications whenever a to-do is assigned. When you can now receive an notifications when an internal comment is assigned. So we don't force it for all the users. As a user, you can decide which notifications you want and which notifications you don't want, right? So that is a setting that we kind of enable it. And uh, i- uh, also in the next few weeks we will also be adding more of it, so you will have a better choices as to you can decide what kind of more notifications that you like to receive. So that was the whole notifications preferences that we introduced. So that was that. Another thing is that I'm just looking at my notes. Okay. All right. So now so we introduced a pretty small setting. So what used to happen was that those of you who use client portal, let me just show you. Those of you who use client portal, and when you click on client question, like these are the snippets, right? Snippets are like the predefined templates like for the questions. So everyone was able to create it from their end. So we actually got some requests from some of the customers that their staff were creating so many because it was open to everyone. Everyone could actually create those snippets, whatever they think, right? So at some point the list was getting so longer, and we got this request where they like they wanted an option to restrict it, like so only the admin user should be able to create it. So we introduced this option. So when you go to settings, and then when you go to question settings, right? So you will now be able to restrict your staff. So what this means is that when you enable this, your staff will not be able to create it. It will only be created, it can only be then created by the admin users, right? It's a small thing, but thought to bring it up. So, I mean, those of you who are facing this problem would be able to use this option, right? So that is another thing that we introduce. All right. Another thing is that on questions module, okay, so whenever your client responded back with suggestions, okay, so let's say if I go to, okay, so this is a good example. I have some transactions where my client responded that, hey, this account should be ran, this is the class should be this, the location should be this, right? uh, what's going to happen is that if you think that these are all fine, rather than accepting them, see right now, in if you think that these suggestions are fine, you just click on it and it will then be accepted. So right now it needs to be done one by one. But then if you think that all these suggestions are all fine and you wanted to accept them all in one go, just simply select them all, and then when you click on resolve, so along with resolving, it will also be accepting all the suggestions, which means whatever your client has suggested will then be updated back to the transactions, and then the transactions will disappear from here. Previously this wasn't happening. Previously when you click on resolve, it used to discard those, right? So it would just kind of not consider the suggestions, ignore it. But now when you click on resolve, it will accept those suggestions and then it will resolve those questions, right? So that's also another thing that we have added. Okay, so I'm just quickly going through my notes again. All right. So this was the major updates that we kind of came up so far in last few weeks. I'm also going to touch base on some of the things that you can expect later this week. So let me just put it up. So this is the staging environment. So whatever you see here, it's not live yet, but will be available very soon. So this is the one feature that we are actually rolling out is so previously this mark as reviewed option was only available at some of the like the default review points, right? It wasn't available for the custom review points. So for example, like if you like in this particular case, previously you did not have a way to mark those transactions as reviewed, right? But now you have that option. So I mean, if you think that this transaction looks fine, right? You just simply click on it, just like other review points, it will be hidden from here. And if you want to see them back, just simply click on it. So it's just a feature that we have also enabled it for custom review points. Okay, so that's a feature that will be available later this week. Another thing is that also the transaction level. So let me just show you. So previously, the internal commands option was only available at the account level. So for example, meaning not account level, but at the to-do level, right? So in this particular case, if this is a task, you can actually create the internal comments, assign it to your people. It wasn't available for what I call the transaction level. So now when you go to cleanup mode, let's say when you go to cleanup mode, and then if you are into entries without class and you wanted to ask something to your people, like your staff or manager or whoever, you now have an option here, command, and then you can ask those questions just like you were able to ask internal comments or questions at the task level. You will now be able to do the same at the transaction level as well, right? So that's another feature that you can expect later this week. Even otherwise, like if there's something general, I mean, it's not something related to transaction or related to any task, but more like a general thing, you can also ask it from here. So when you click on add, you can type in your questions or whatever, you can assign it to whoever you like. And so in this particular case, this is more like a general, which is not associated with your transaction or to do. And all of those commands, as you guys know, will actually eventually show up here, right? So that way you don't have to go to different modules to find out what is assigned to you or what are the different open commands or questions. All you have to do, just simply click on here on the chat icon, and then you can find all the open um, questions right here. So that's another thing that we have introduced. I mean, it's like introduced in staging, but that's coming later this week. All right. So that was that. I'm just gonna once again quickly check if I just want to make sure I'm covering that. Meanwhile, I'll also check the chat. Okay, no questions. So far, so good. All right. Improvement. Yeah, we will also be making some changes with the advanced search, which is what we are working on. So, what's going to happen is with the advanced search and with the parameters, we'll be adding some more criterias, right? So, more criterias like you wanted to, let's say, find any transactions with the comments or with the questions. There is going to be one criteria. Like even with the name, let's say name. I mean, there wasn't a way to find out. I mean, like we just adding the blank option. So, which means if the transaction has no name, like it's a blank, you will be able to even pull up those transactions as well, right? So, the we will be adding those that blank option for name, class, location. So, if at all you wanted to find out any such transactions where class is blank or name is blank, you will be able to do that, right? So that in small thing, but that's coming up. Okay, so these are the major things, guys, uh, that will be rolling out this week. Behind the scene, we have been making a lot of changes, so we will be we are upgrading the grid overall in the system. So that will actually enhance. I mean, that's more like a backend change. You guys may not realize this, but overall it's gonna improve the loading time. Like if you go to, let's say for example, close mode, it at times it takes time to draw the grid, this kind of grid. So we are kind of making some changes to that. So the whole close module and task module will actually load pretty much faster than it is doing right now. That's that. We over the next, not next, but this quarter, we'll be majorly focusing on improving the close, especially the profit and loss and balance sheet. There are so many features that we are adding with it. So a lot of you also wanted some sign off features here at the account level. See, right now, what happens is that if you wanted to attach any working papers at the balance sheet level, at this point, you are not able to do that. To do that, you have to first add that account into the close mode, and then you should be able to do it. That's how it is right now. But we will be making a lot of enhancements and improvements with profit and loss and balance sheet this August month. So you will be hearing a lot about that. So that is pretty much it. We continue to get a lot of wish list from many of you, and we actually try to accommodate as many wishes as we can. And even as of today, we kind of try to 70% of stuff actually we like come from our customer. That's how we prioritize it. And 30% we kind of spare time, like more for us to improve some user experience here and there, or some backend changes that you guys may not know, some bug fixes and things like that, right? So this is how the rest of the quarter looks like. Um, let me just quickly see any questions, guys. I think that's pretty much it. What I wanted to cover today. But if there's anything that you want me to cover or anything like that, feel free to ask. Like, I mean, unmute yourself and ask. And we, those of you who, let's say, have any new people coming in and you want them to kind of get familiar with Xenett. feel free to have them book a call with us, and we'll be happy to like explain them how it works and things like that, right? So we actually do it for a lot of our customers. They actually encourage their people, new joinee, to have a call with us, so you guys don't have to spend time explaining them, right? So I thought I'll just mention that. And also, there's the three dots. There are resources available on the help, so you guys can also use them. Like we do have video tutorials where the whole Xenett is actually explained in law, like various videos. So you guys can also use that and give it to your people. That will also be kind of quite handy. So that's that. All right, any other questions, guys? I think I mean I haven't seen anything in the chat, but if you guys have anything, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, we are good to go. We'll just wait for a minute and see if you guys have any questions as such. Yeah, so Laura, that's a good question. That's also one of the feature that will be rolled out in this quarter itself. Yeah, one of the thing along with the close, there will be also features like this that you just said is also coming up. So we'll also be making some changes to client portal also. So yes, you will be very soon. Your client user will be able to upload the documents without you asking them, right? So that's coming up very shortly. All right, I'm just saying Amanda is writing something. Let's see. Yeah, Amanda, that's already available for Zero as well. So you can try and see. Yeah, it's already available for Zero client as well. So yeah, Kelly, looking forward. So yeah, we'll get in touch soon. Yeah, Amanda, let's just chat separately. Our support team will reach out to you and will certainly help you. Like you should be able to see it for Zero as well if you have connected one. So all right, guys, looks like we are all good for today. Thank you for joining in. Hope to see you guys next month. And yeah, as I said, feel free to reach out for any help with the training implementation. We are always there.